I want to recommend a book that's called Talent is Overrated. It's by an author named Geoff, Jeff Colvin, Colvin, Jeff Colvin. Talent is Overrated. And what he does in this book is he makes the case that people have rated talent higher than we should, and people who are successful succeed because of self-discipline. It's easy for a person to say, well, I was born with talent, or I was not born with talent. And if I was not born with talent, there's no hope for me, so I don't have to really exert myself to try and make myself succeed. So that's the angle from which he writes that book. So let's talk about self-discipline this morning. The character quality of your self-discipline determines the consistent quality and quantity of your personal development. If you have self-discipline, then the likelihood is greater that your personal development is going to be far better. If your personal development is not great, it is probably because you don't have good character quality self-discipline. Now, the choice is yours. You can either live for today and pay tomorrow, or you can pay today and live for tomorrow. You have to make a sacrifice for the success that you eventually desire to enjoy. Here is what was said about self-discipline by Brian Tracy, that self-discipline is the ability to do what you should do, whether you feel like it or not. The ability to do what you should do that has nothing to do with how you feel, but I would even add beyond that, it's not only just the ability, it's the willingness to go do what you should do, regardless of how you feel about it. Then, in 2011, a Stress in America survey, 27% of respondents said the lack of willpower was the biggest barrier to making healthy lifestyle changes. So often there are people who say, I know I need to quit eating sweets, and I'm included in that group. I know I need to exercise. I know I need to read things. I know I need to do something. But our willpower, we don't have the willpower. We don't exercise the willpower to do it. So 27% of people said, you know what? My life would be better if I had self-discipline. In 1 month, there were 2,800 internet searches for self-discipline. At the same time, there was 200,000 searches for the word fun. That shows that people are far more interested in having fun than they are in developing self-discipline. But if you develop self-discipline now, the likelihood is great that you'll be able to have tons of fun for years to come. Self-discipline, crucial and critical. Short-term pleasure often comes at the expense of long-term pain. How many people have you heard say, I wish I had taken better care of my body when I was younger? How many people have you heard say, I wish I was more responsible with my finances when I was younger? And now that they are aged, they're paying the penalty for what they did not do. Short-term pleasure often comes at the expense of long-term pain. Sometimes that pain is very, very, very painful. What does Mike Tyson and Dr. King have in common? At first, a person might think absolutely nothing, but yes, they do. self-discipline. Both of them were very disciplined men. Had they not been disciplined, they would have never risen to the level of influence that they did. Dr. King had self-discipline. He could stand in the face of adversity. Mike Tyson ran in the cold and the rain so that he could stand in the ring. Up in the Catskill Mountains early in the morning, 4 o'clock, he is up training for his fight. He's out there in a hoodie, in the rain, running. That takes self-discipline. Self-discipline propelled them. And if my memory serves me correct, he became the youngest heavyweight champion at that time. Don't know whether we've had a younger one since, I don't know. But can you imagine when Dr. King was 27 years old, he was mobilizing a national and international movement? Self-discipline will take you to the top. Those who keep their heart focused on the promise will receive the prize. Self-discipline is going to start out at the heart. So we're starting out at the heart. All right, let's stop right here and make sure we're all on the same sheet of music. See if there are any questions or comments. You get a chance for smart remarks later, not right yet, but you will get a chance later. Any comments or questions? I want you to marinate this statement. Those who keep their heart focused on the promise will receive the prize. See, it's easy for us to say that circumstances, external things, interfered with my self-discipline. I had decided that I was going to get up and walk every morning, but I didn't do it because it was raining. I didn't do it because it was cold. I didn't do it because, oh man, that bed felt so good. I didn't sleep well last night. I was up later than normal. All of those are nothing more than excuses that will sabotage your self-discipline. So those who keep their heart focused on the promise, they will receive the prize. So how do I do that? First, you must look at the one who made the promise. Look at the source of the promise and looking for the validity of the promise so that I can have total courage and confidence that the promise will become a reality. Look at the one who made the promise. In the medical profession, Heart Association and other research specialists declare that diet and exercise contribute to a more vibrant health. Do you believe that? Do you believe what the Heart Association and research specialists have said? So you look at the one who made the promise. So the medical profession makes a promise that if you will exercise and diet, it will have an impact on the vibrancy of your health. Do you believe that? Financial profession show what a regular investment will do. Do you believe the numbers? You talk to a financial planner, financial professional, that person will share with you that regular deposits into an investment account will pay big dividends. They can be small, regular, start out early. Do you believe that? Do you believe the promise of the financial professionals? Look at the one who made the promise. Now we're talking about how to develop self-discipline. Look at the one who made the promise, because the one who stands behind the promise is the one that gives me the courage and confidence to believe that the promise is true, that it will become a reality. But if I do not believe the promise, I don't believe the one who made the promise, then there is no motivation to exercise self-discipline. Not only do I look at the one who made the promise, I look for signs that validate the promise. I look for signs that validate the promise. When do you feel better yourself? When you are active. That's a sign. Regular checkups indicate that when you are active, your health indicators are more favorable. So you're looking for signs that validate the promise. I try to walk every morning. That's my challenge. I have to admit that I feel so much better when I exercise regularly. I have been exercising with some degree of regularity for 45 years. There has been extended periods of time, probably as long as a year or two, and I did not exercise. But it was my lethargic feeling that drove me back to exercise, because I had experienced the fact that I feel better when I am active. And so when I realize I have no energy, no enthusiasm, no motivation, it forces me to get up and get active doing something. So look for the signs that validate the promise. When do your accumulations, your financial accumulations, when do they peak? When do they increase? When you systematically save. And your regular portfolio printout indicates that. So you look for the one who validates the promise, and then you look for signs that this promise is true. All right, let me stop right here and take questions. There should be some questions now. There should be some practical application questions. Developing self-discipline. When you study, when you do well on your examination, do you do well after you discipline yourself and study, or do you do better when you just go into class, don't study, and yes? So look for signs. Those signs are very powerful. They motivate you and mobilize you. If you have joined a weight loss program, that's why they want you to weigh in regularly, and you see the pounds falling off. That's a sign that validates the promise. If you keep doing this, you see your heart rate, your blood pressure going down. That validates the promise. You see your cholesterol level going down. That validates the promise. You see your stock, your investments, your 401k, you see the increase. It validates the promise. So look for signs that validate the promise, that reinforces in the heart that what I'm doing is working. Since what I'm doing is working, I need to keep doing it. And if I keep doing it, I will get to the place where I want to be. What questions or comments do you have? Self-discipline. Look for the sign to validate the promise. Let's see, we have someone. I think we all agree that self-discipline is the key to success, but the question is, how do we tap into it? Is the true question. That's what I'm telling you to do. This is how you tap into it. Now, there's no magical formula. You don't get up one day and all of a sudden you have self-discipline. It has to be developed. Okay. So now the first thing that we talked about looking at the one who made the promise. We look at the one who made the promise. Okay, we keep looking at the one who, in other words, the one who made the promise. Do they know what they're talking about? Does it work? That's why when we hang out with people who are successful, And then they look back and said, this is what I did. Well, why would you argue with a person who is holding up their success? So this is a challenge, but remember now, we started out, it starts at the heart. Sometimes we don't develop self-discipline because we've never really decided in our heart, that's what I'm going to do. In other words, we start the program hoping something in the program makes us do something that we really have not committed in our heart to do. Okay, so it's a heart issue. And so I have decided, number one, I'm going to develop self-discipline. It doesn't matter. I'm going to develop self-discipline. So these are the things that helps me stay motivated doing it. But I've made up my mind, I'm going to be disciplined. Okay, now you made up your mind, you're going to breathe. So if someone puts their hand over your nostrils, you're going to fight. I don't care what happens. You are going to do everything you can to try and breathe, because you know that if you don't breathe, you're going to be out of here. So it doesn't matter how much opposition you made up in your mind that you're going to be breathing until you die. So now nobody has to encourage you. Nobody has to remind you. You are going to breathe until you die. That's what you've made a decision. So these are the things that ushers us along the path. Look for the signs that validate the promise. And when we do that, we will feel so much better. All right, other questions. Thanks for that question. You can type a question in the chat room and remain anonymous, or you can just raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask your question verbally. Okay, look for the signs that validate the promise. Look for the signs that validate the promise. Okay, and then live for the promise. Now, live for the promise. Now, notice the three things that we have mentioned to you that you need to do. Look at the one who made the promise. Look at the one who made the promise. Then look for the signs that validate the promise. And then now live for the promise. Now, this is crucial. I'm going to show you from some Old Testament examples in just a moment of how this and why this is so important. So stay with me. Matter of fact, you can text this link to someone else and let them go ahead and join wherever they can. All right, so live for the promise. Live for the promise. You may and you often must travel a long distance on the road toward success before you experience your first reward. You may travel the road a long distance before you experience your first reward. You cannot go to the gym today and exercise, come home, stand on the scale, and you have lost 15 pounds. It doesn't work that way. You cannot go to the gym and lift weights and then come home and measure your biceps and they've grown 3 inches. It does not work that way. You cannot fast for 24 hours and get on the scale and expect to have dropped 32 pounds. It does not work that way. So you've got to live for the promise. You must travel a long distance before you experience your first reward. We are accustomed to taking an aspirin and then in 5 minutes the headache goes away. That might work with some pains, but there are some pains. You're going to have to take the medicine for a week before you begin to see any change in your health. So you got to live for the promise. Live for the promise. Okay? How long must I exercise before my blood pressure, my heart rate, and my cholesterol drops? If you get your medication today, go to the doctor tomorrow and get checked again and declare this doesn't work and throw it out. Stop exercising. That would not be wise at all. So live for the promise. Now you're living for the promise because you know the one who made the promise can deliver it. So how many of you quit exercising because your pressures rose first before beginning to decline? You'll see this on a spiritual level. The Bible talks about overcoming evil with good. How many of you tried that? And when you first started trying to overcome evil with good, the people who were mistreating you started behaving worse. And you said, this doesn't work. That is exactly what happened to the Hebrews when they were in Egypt. When Moses came to deliver them, he went to Pharaoh. What did Pharaoh do? He made their burden harder. Many of them thought, no way, we aren't getting closer to being delivered. We are further from being delivered. And so they were angry at Moses. But guess what? They were closer to being delivered. It did not look like it. So you got to travel the road a long distance. Travel the road a long distance. You got to travel the road a long distance before you get to the promise, before you see the first prize. You've got to travel the road a long time. Okay? How long must I save and invest before I experience my first reward for being a thrifty person? How many of you put some money in a savings and quit after the first dollar investment and said to yourself, this doesn't work? Maybe you put some money in the stock market. You bought a mutual fund. And the first month when you received your report, you had less money than you did before. You said, this doesn't work. And you took your money out. Then you went back 20 years later and looked at that stock and saw, wow, over a 20-year period of time, it had grown by 18%. Wow, if I had left my money in there. You got to live for the promise. What questions do you have? Questions or comments? Got to live for the promise. Got to fall in love with living for the promise. Listen, years ago, someone did a song, Living for the Weekend. You understand that. How many of you get excited on Thursday, get excited on Friday because Saturday is coming up? Listen, that's living for the promise, because the company has promised you that on Saturday, you do not have to get out of bed early. On Saturday, you don't have to get up and get in your car, get dressed and get in your car and drive through traffic and come to work. On Saturday, you can do whatever you wanted to do. So you are living Monday through Friday for the promise of Saturday and Sunday. You get a chance to do whatever it is you want to do. Live for the promise. Live for the promise. All right, what questions do you have? Okay, living for the promise. Living for the promise. All right, and then you got to long for the promise. Now that goes back to that heart again. Got to long for the promise. There is a desire. There is a longing desire for what it is that the promise is going to produce. Let's see how that works. Now this is crucial. Now, this is the most important statement I'm going to make today. Matter of fact, I really could have just put this one sentence up here, these two sentences up here, and just talked about this. That's how important these two sentences are. Continually contrast the promise, not the present, with the past. Contrast the promise with the past, because don't compare the promise with the present. For example, some of you have heard of a person who's had a knee replacement surgery or a hip replacement surgery. They were in pain before they had their surgery. After the surgery, the first time they exercised, some of the people had so much pain, they thought, oh my goodness, I don't know what I should have done this or not. So now the promise is that if you have the knee replacement, the hip replacement, you're going to be pain-free. Now that's the promise. But presently, I have more pain than I did before. So if I compare the present with the past, it seems like I'm getting worse. So I regret what I'm doing and I quit. But if I compare the past with the promise, I'm getting better. See, the present often distorts the promise in favor of the past. And so we want to go back to what it is that we were doing before. For example, has someone ever said to you, there's a shortcut? If you'll take this route, it'll save time and energy. The first time you tried the shortcut, you got lost. So what did you say? Oh, no, stop it. I won't do that again. See, because you are comparing the fact that you were lost with the past. Because in the past, I could get there in 40 minutes. And today it took me 50 minutes because I got lost. But when you look at the promise is you can get there in 25 minutes. So it's worth the effort. So long for the promise. The present may not indicate much progress. When you look at yourself, you say, oh, I don't see any progress. What would a farmer who takes his corn, he goes into the field and plants it. The next day he goes out across the field looking at his farm. He sees no indicators of progress. What if he said to himself, I could have eaten that corn. I have wasted putting it in the ground. There's no indication of progress. You would say, what a foolish farmer. What if he goes out a week later? He sees a green stalk. He said, I can't eat that. I would have been better off to have eaten the corn. I wasted it putting it in the ground. A month later, he goes out. He simply has a larger green stalk. He says to himself, how foolish was I to waste my corn. I could have eaten it myself. Guess what? 5 months later, when he go out, he's going to see so much progress. It's unbelievable. So we've got to train ourselves to long for, have a deep desire for the promise. Now, you may perceive that your past was more convenient than your present, but your promise is always more convenient than your past. When you read the story of the Israelites as they left Egypt traveling toward the promised land, there were numerous times they began to complain. And you know what they said? It was better for us in Egypt. At least we had something to eat. It was better for us in Egypt. It was better for us in Egypt. Now, what is the mistake they're doing? They are comparing their present, they are comparing the past with the present. They are now in the wilderness and they do not have dietary options. It's manna or nothing. But while they were in Egypt, they had a variety of dietary items to choose from. So it looks like they're in a worse predicament. They left Egypt where they had much food to eat. They're in the wilderness, they only have one thing to eat. So if they compare their past with their present, that's what made them want to go back to their past. So don't make that mistake. Compare your past with the promise. What is the promise? The promise is you're going to be in a land that floweth with milk and honey. You're going to be in a land where there's freedom, prosperity, get a chance to worship God, be free. Okay? So don't keep comparing the past with the present. Compare the past to the promise. All right, what questions do you have? There ought to be a question here now. Somebody make up a question so we'll break the ice and then people will start asking questions. We're talking about developing self-discipline. This is how you do it. This is how you do it.
Hi, Brother Marshall, this is Paula Oates. I was just wondering, what about so some people go all in, but what happens when you run out like a rabbit is that you kind of you kind of burn out early. So what about that all or nothing mentality that sometimes we go into things with?
Well, what a person has to do in developing self-discipline is plan his program. For example, when I have took a year off from exercise, I have been out of the gym for a year. I don't go into the gym and start lifting the maximum. I have to build up to that. Now, but the question is, with self-discipline, do I have enough self-discipline, number one, to discover what program I need to follow? And then do I have enough self-discipline to manage myself, to make myself do it? Now, when we talk about self-discipline requires knowledge and understanding. And it is possible that a person, for example, let's take the health situation. We're talking about exercise. Let's say the doctor says if you would do aerobics 3 times a week, it'll help lower your blood pressure. Well, you don't go in the gym and do 4 hours of aerobics. You can't start off there. If you do, you're going to be burnt out and it's not going to work. So you got to be disciplined. Even when things are feeling good, you have to be disciplined enough to know when I must stop, which is exactly what a person has to do when you're eating your favorite food. When you're eating your favorite dessert, you got to have enough discipline to say, you know what? Enough carbs for today. It still tastes good, but I got to quit. So you are correct that sometimes self-discipline without knowledge and understanding leads us to a rapid burnout. The same will be true if a person's trying to save money. You've never saved any money, and then all of a sudden you say, well, I'm going to start a savings program. I'm going to save 75% of my salary. Well, you might do that the first week, then you're going to have some bills due the second week. You're going to pull out your savings, and before long, you're going to find out that you have abandoned. So deciding what my program is crucial and critical. Thanks for the question. Other questions?
Brother Marshall, this is Sister Weaver. I love this lesson because it fits me all the way around on your medical side and financial side. And when you're too tired to do something, but you go ahead and do it, to be disciplined at it, and it's better for you. I had my doctor kept telling me that if I don't change my foods, I'm gonna end up being a diabetic. Well, I kept eating the sweets and stuff, and I ended up being a diabetic. Now it's like a culture shock. Okay, don't put me on the medicine because I'm gonna change. But she had to put me on it anyway. Later on, I started eating more vegetables and fruit. And then she said, you don't have to take the medicine anymore. But if I had done it from the beginning, then I would have never had to put in my records that I was a diabetic, which made me lose an insurance policy because I did not do it from the beginning. So this lesson is very good for me because I'm trying to get disciplined all the way around in my life.
Thanks so much.
Thank you
for sharing that. Thanks so much for sharing that. See, here's one of the things that interferes with our discipline and our discipline ourselves to do. We have a tendency to think it's not going to happen to me. It happened to them, but I'm going to beat the odds. And even when we see a negative or harmful trend, we think, oh yeah, it's going to stop before it gets to the dangerous point. It's going to stop, so I can keep doing it. No, you have to do something different. Okay, so the promise for you is, I now can stop. See, in the beginning, your promise was you don't have to become a diabetic. You can keep your insurance promise from a policy. So that was your promise, but you did not exercise the self-discipline. So guess what? Now you lost the insurance policy. Diabetes is in your record. And now your self-discipline is going to help you recover, but it is not going to help you recover everything that you lost. And so that is the crucial point. that we try to get into our children, into younger people, etc., if you don't discipline yourself early in life and consistently, then you're going to lose something. And sometimes what you lose, you can't get it back. And so so thanks so much for sharing that. Someone has said, I think there are times when we confuse self-discipline with motivation. Motivation ebbs and flows, but self-discipline is a planned, deliberate action. It doesn't care how you feel. See, motivation is what pulls you out of the bed, but self-discipline is what says to motivation, get them out of the bed, get them out of the bed. So self-discipline is what will help us to keep that motivation and keep moving forward. Someone else says an excellent example, Sister Weaver, so thanks for sharing that. Someone said, good point, Jamal, I'm understanding mind motivation in some areas. Great lesson and great example, Sister Weaver. So Sister Weaver, several people have said, thanks so much for sharing that. And I really appreciate you for sharing that, because we plead with people, self-discipline, because it will help you long for the promise. Now, but we gotta then, once we make up in our minds what we want to do, we then have to develop the practical program. So how do I stay motivated? I may need to stay motivated by having a friend of mine to call me and challenge me to get out of the bed. Or I may stay motivated by another friend saying, I'll walk with you. So that motivation, we have to decide, what is the practical process that I use for that motivation? But if there's no self-discipline, then we'll make up every kind of excuse in the world, and nothing will really help us. How much more convenient is being a couch potato than the soreness of the day after the first exercise session? Okay? How much more convenient is it? Let's lie around on the sofa, but you're sore after that first exercise. But guess what? Once that self-discipline kicks in, and you go exercise, you gotta keep longing for the promise. Gotta long for the promise. How much more convenient is lowered blood pressure, heart rate, cholesterol than a couch potato after a series of successful sessions? Gotta long for the promise. Gotta put that promise in my heart, and I long for it. I desire for it. I really want to get it. That's what keeps you in school. That's what keeps you doing it. How much more convenient to enjoy all of your economic resources now than to save for the future. Oh man, it's a lot of fun to enjoy that money now. And all the excuses, well, I might not live for tomorrow. There's a person I know who says, I live for the moment. You cannot get them to save not even a dime under no condition. Well, that person has never fallen in love with the promise, okay? How much more convenient to have a nest egg so that when you are 75 years old, you will not have to depend on the unstable Social Security and benevolent handouts. There is a friend of mine who did not plan very well financially, and he became ill. He was in his early 60s. He did not have insurance. He said to me, it was so embarrassing to go to the health department, have to sit there, wait, beg for some medical attention, because he had no insurance and no money. He shared with me that just emasculated his masculinity, and he felt like nothing. As a matter of fact, that was so powerful. It was not long after that he gave up his will to live. Though he lived probably 8, 9, or 10 years longer, Most of those was in a nursing home. And so in his heart, he desired to die long before his body said it's time to die. I could not get him to exercise. I could not get him to think differently. In other words, he just decided one day, I don't want to live. His body said, you're not worn out enough to die. So he gradually, over a period of time, deteriorated because he lost his longing for the promise. All right? Now, we got a part 2 for self-discipline that we'll pick up with next month. But I have given you enough to marinate on for today. What other questions and comments do you have? This is your one time now for smart remarks. You get comments or questions and one smart remark. Any comments or questions? Any person got a question about how can I actually get this self-discipline into a particular situation that you're struggling with? How do you get there? Anybody, you got a situation there. You haven't developed the discipline yet to do it. Bring it out. We'll tell you how to do that. You got to have a practical program. And the practical program has to go beyond just praying about it. It has to be functional. I heard someone's voice.
Yeah, Brother Marshall, this is Brother Davis. Just a question in regards to, I know this is mainly focused on self-discipline. Can you talk just a minute on church discipline, and not in terms of correction or behavior, but a church that is disciplined, and how does a church become disciplined as a unit when it comes to the things that we do, the things that we are striving to do as servants. As we talk about being disciples, Christ talked about training and teaching, but just in regards of how do we can apply this to us as a body?
Well, disciple is the word discipline in a sense, and no organization can be better disciplined as a group than the individuals within. So it goes back to, we've got to get individuals disciplined. That's one of the reasons why, after doing coaching with churches and organizations, I discovered it, and even church leaders, it's important for me to offer coaching to the members. Because, for example, remember we started out talking about self-confidence. Every church has had probably an evangelism seminar. And in many cases, nothing resulted from it. Because the seminar said, go talk to your neighbor, go do X, Y, Z. But the members did not have enough self-confidence that they could successfully do it. So that's why in my coaching, I want to talk to the members as well, because what I'm trying to do here is to mobilize the individuals so they can find their rightful position inside of the body. For example, let's just talk about financial. If people are not financially disciplined to give, it will impact the overall financial health of the church. If the individual members are not disciplined to get to church on time, it impacts whether or not you can start the worship on time. That means your visitors are sitting here saying, wow, they said 11 o'clock. It's 11:15. So we've got to get the individual. So from a whole perspective, we look at who in the group is holding the group back. You will see a basketball team. You will see a football team game in progress. And the player who missed his route, he did not run the way he was supposed to run 15 yards and turn out. But he ran 15 yards and turned in. You'll see the quarterback fussing at him when he gets back into the huddle. Why? Because as a team, they are not going to be more disciplined than they are individually. So as a team, everybody take your deep breath, take you another deep breath. As a team, it is the team's responsibility to put pressure on its individual members to be self-disciplined because you're holding us back. So members who come to church late, the members who are there on time need to say to them, you make us look bad to our visitors. There are people online waiting for our worship to start at 10:30, but we can't start till 10:35 because you're not here. So the group has to, that is exactly what Paul talks about in the Corinthian letter. He said, when the church is assembled together, I want you to deliver this one to Satan. Why? You're making us look bad as a group. So the principle is the group has the responsibility to say to those inside of it, you got to be disciplined. It is the exact same thing that our parents said to us when we got ready to go someplace. You know who you are. Now you better act like it. So why did your mother whip you or your father discipline you so sternly? Because you made that family look bad. You made it look like you had no home training. How many of your parents said when you visited somebody's house, now don't go out and act like you haven't had anything to eat? So you get out here and you act like we don't feed you. I remember one time, one of our sons went home with a church member after church. And my two youngest sons, when they ate, they would hum when they were young. My mother said I did that. So this family took them home to eat. They thought we were not feeding him because he started humming when he started to eat. He hummed while he ate. And so I had to remind them that that's what I did. That's just what happened. But see, as parents, we're concerned about how does the group look? How does the group look? So as a church, we got to say, come on now, you got to get disciplined. Come on. That's what makes good teamwork work. All right, someone said, would you agree that growing in this area is best accomplished by small stair-step victories and building a community? Absolutely, both of those can be highly successful. What people have to do is discover what is my normal rate of growth, and it's different for people. I have the ability. I am 100% self-motivated and self-disciplined. I never need anybody to nurture and encourage me to do what I know I need to do. Everybody cannot do that. There are people who need that. I can make as large steps as possible from beginning to end. For example, I have not been exercising. So I decided I'm going to exercise Monday through Friday. And so guess what? I just started out immediately 5 days a week. Now, some people would have said, you know what? I'm going to exercise 1 day this week for a month. Then next month, I'm going to move up to 2 days. So every person needs to discover what is my rate of recuperation? Am I a person that can change quickly? Some people can. They have developed that type of constitution, and some people can't. So you have to ask yourself, am I the person who needs small steps? There are people who quit smoking cold turkey. They just quit and never picked up another cigarette. There are people who cut back from 3 packs a day to 2 packs, from 2 packs to 1 pack, from 1 pack to a half a pack. That's how they do, and that's how they do in life. Now, the downside is when the person who is able to quit cold turkey has no tolerance for the person who needs a process, or the person who takes the process who claims nobody can quit cold turkey. No, they can. There are people in every part of the spectrum, and we have to learn to honor that. But how do you motivate each individual thereby being that disciple? Some people are not motivated. So we got to start out with that. Paul writes in the book of Romans and says, live at peace as much as lieth within you. Live at peace. So why would he say it that way? There's some people you're not going to get along with. So you got to understand that. So there are some people that's not motivated. Now, once again, if you can get a person to long for the promise, you might get motivated. But if they have no interest in the promise, you're not going to be able to motivate. You're just not. I mean, why would a person become motivated for the objective when they're not even interested in the objective? For example, the person that I talked to you earlier about, who lives for the day. I said to this person, what do you expect to happen when you die? You know, what provisions have you made for your funeral? That person said to me, well, somebody will do something. So that person has no longing for the promise. That person is not interested. And I can tell you, because I know this person personally, this person doesn't have a nickel for burial. You couldn't get them to save a nickel because the promise does not appeal to them. So guess what? I can't motivate him. He is past he has to change his desire about the promise. If he gets up one day and say, you know what? I think it would be good for me to make some provisions so that family will not have to bury me. How do I do this? Now that he has some motivation, I can help him develop some self-discipline and help him discover a process where he can get there. But some people are not motivated. So how much is a person interested in the promise? So we got to talk up the promise. We got to brag about the promise. Make the promise look good. Make the promise enticing. Hold up in front of this person what the promise produces. Now, sometimes it's hard to get a person to do that because some people don't see the value of a church starting worship on time. But I'm a stickler for time. If I moved to a city and I was looking for a church to place my membership with, if I attended that church, if they started services late, I wouldn't even put them on my list of consideration. Years ago, a church invited me to come up and preach to them. They were looking for a preacher, and I went up to try out. I got to that church, and Sunday school started, I believe, at 10 o'clock. I got to the church building, and hardly nobody was there at 10 o'clock. So before any of the members got to that church building, I had already decided there's no way in the world I'll come preach to this church. They called. So we got to realize that when people are late, it does say something to people. It says something to people about what you think about what you do. But once again, what we do is we tell ourselves that our lack of self-discipline is not a problem. But I'm telling you, it is a problem. It is a problem. And sometimes things that look so little. Years ago, this happened to me. I had to go to Dallas, Texas. I was living in Atlanta. And I was going to go to Dallas, Texas after the morning worship. So after I preached that, and I was going to drive to Dallas, Texas, which is a 12-hour ride, 800 miles. So after I preached, or rather before I preached that morning, I said to the audience, I will not be at the back door greeting people today. I got to head to Dallas. So when I finished this sermon, and we had two morning worships, we had an 8 o'clock worship and an 11 o'clock worship. So I said to them at 11 o'clock, I said, when I finish this sermon, I'm going to be heading out that side door and getting on the road and heading to Dallas. The very next Sunday, a mother and her daughter was baptized. A mother and her daughter was baptized. And she said to me, and interesting, this mother that was baptized, we were born on the same day, same year. So we call ourselves twins. Now, this happened in 2000. So this happened 23 years ago. 23 years ago. This mother is still faithful in the church. But that next Sunday when she was baptized, she said to me, my daughter and I wanted to be baptized last Sunday, but it seemed like you were in a hurry and you didn't have time. Wow. That said to me, wow. So little things like that. Now, what would have happened if that mother and daughter had a car accident and the daughter had gotten killed and the mother said to me, you know, we decided we were going to be baptized last Sunday, but you were in a hurry. See, what you communicate is amazing. So now I would never say to the church that I'm going to be leaving right after, because somebody there might think you're in too big a hurry. Now, I actually didn't even do the baptizing. One of the men did, but she didn't know that. So the image that we portray can have lasting impact. What if someone or something that came along and changed her mind? So much of the negative impact that our lateness and lack of self-discipline has, we don't ever know about. And so therefore we keep arguing that it's not a problem. Any other questions? We've gone a little bit over time, but it's not a problem for me. I'm excited about this. Any questions or comments? I'm not in too big a hurry to lay a little on if we need to. Well, thanks for taking the journey with us. I am so glad and I am happy to report not a single person, at least our numbers are higher now than they were when we started. So that means most people, if not everybody, stayed with us. By Monday at 12 o'clock, you should have your recording. It should be in the hands of Sister, in the hands of Quentin, and you check with him, and you should have it by Monday at 12 o'clock. All right. Thanks for taking the journey with us. Let's pray. God, we thank you so much for creating us to be motivational individuals. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to develop self-discipline. Thank you for making the promise of how quality of life that we can enjoy not only on earth, but in eternity if we are diligent disciples of yours. Help us to see that discipline makes a difference. Love us and lead us. In Jesus' name, amen. Enjoy the rest of the day and be safe and be on time
Amen.
tomorrow.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.